Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
I knew you just told me all day long. I saw it first on Twitter yesterday, breaking Donald Trump allegedly talked about classified U.S. nuclear submarine information with a member of the Mar-a-Lago Club who turned out to be an Australian billionaire who then proceeded to share the information with more than a dozen foreign officials. This is reckless behavior. Legally, isn't that the definition of espionage, Glenn? Am I wrong?
So even more fundamentally, we have seen him compromise our national security over and over and over and over again, Steph. And the part of it that just I'll never get over is that there are so many people who, when they compromise, one secret document, go to jail, immediately to jail. They do not pass go. They're detained pending trial, like we saw with Jack Teixeira. And yet our system, our institutions of government refuse to step up and detain Donald Trump pending trial, although he is the most dangerous man to American democracy in our nation at the moment. That's the part, it's the unequal application of justice that I will never get past.
Glenn, that's what I was saying. This is why we love you so much, because I feel like very few of us share a sense of urgency about the urgent threat he poses to the United States, both domestically and internationally. And this is what I was saying is, doesn't the seriousness of the crime have anything to do with this? This would seem like this would go to the top of the list. I mean, I know I saw Jack Smith is looking into this. Well, I would hope so, right? But what is, like you say, what's the mechanism? If he can't be detained for this, we don't know what else he has or what else he's sharing, do we? As we speak.
He can be detained. He should be detained. And I would maintain that he must be detained because we have a mechanism for this, Steph, and we deploy it 1,000 times a day in jurisdictions all across our nation. When somebody is indicted in a felony case and the evidence shows clearly and convincingly that they're a danger to our community, that they're a danger to the safety of society, they're jailed pending trial. They're detained pending trial, not as a vehicle to punish them, but to protect society. So we have a vehicle for it. And every last flippant court turns a blind eye to the law as it was intended to be applied. And that's what drives me to distraction.
But isn't this a separate crime, disseminating? This dissemination, there's the theft of classified information, but also disseminating. All his crimes are serious, Glenn, but it does seem like there's a sliding scale from sedition to espionage to, I don't know what we did with the Rosenbergs, but do we just be like, oh, we'll just put that in the list of stuff and you can, stay out on bail while we figure that out? I mean, it just seems like the seriousness of the crime would move that to the top of the list, no?
Yes, disseminating national defense information, which has a specific definition under the law, what constitutes national defense information. Yeah. I'm not an expert in that arena, Steph, but disclosing the number of nuclear warheads a submarine is capable of carrying and how close we can get to, Russian ships or submarines without being detected. If that's not national defense information, then perhaps we need to tweak the definition of national defense information. But that is the very definition of espionage under our federal laws. If you disseminate national defense information, you violated our nation's espionage laws. Yeah. So listen, Donald Trump could be confined for 10,000 years at this point if he were convicted of all charges against him. And yet that's not enough, Steph, because we see him trying to push his trials farther and farther down the road, if not get them dismissed outright. Now, those efforts will fail, but he needs to be detained pending trial right here, right now.
Well, and also, as luck or lack of luck would have it, his unqualified, hack judge is in charge of the classified documents case. And he's obviously trying to push this past the election. So, God forbid he gets reelected and makes this go away. But I think I'm having a hard time getting my mind around, is that possible with something as serious as espionage?
It's possible in the hands of Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee who has already been found by an appellate court to have abused her judicial discretion to do an enormous favor, though, for Donald Trump. So yes, in her hands, this could very well get pushed beyond the 2024 election. The good news is in the hands of Judge Tanya Chutkan in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump's federal prosecution for attempting to overturn the election's results, that will not get pushed. That will proceed with jury selection in March, and Donald Trump will be convicted just as quickly as Peter Navarro was as soon as that jury begins deliberating his fate.
So I'm going to guess what your answer will be to Trump channeling Nixon's defense. If the president does it, it's not illegal. And to just dismiss the January 6th charges, is that kind of a, what's the term, non-starter legally?
Yeah, that is Richard Nixon's, if I do it, it's not illegal. If the president does it, it's not illegal. And Steph, ordinarily I urge people to read court filings, but you know what? I urge no one to read this court filing by Donald Trump's lawyers, because as I was reading it, if the people around me listened very closely, they could hear my brain cells dying and hitting the floor. That is just how stupid, idiotic, and baseless these assertions were by Trump's attorneys that, the case should be dismissed because he's got absolute immunity. Not a thing in the criminal law.
Right.
So don't read it, but you know what, Steph? Read Jack Smith's reply, because it's coming and it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah. Well, let's a couple of your tweets. You said September legal recap. Trump suffers massive loss in New York fraud case. Trump loses D.C. recusal motion. First Georgia state RICO co-defendant flips will testify against Trump and company. A spectacularly bad month for Trump. We just played Alina Habba. Bless me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Before you came on. I mean, it is just hard to get your head around that she just didn't check a box. So he's there whining every day that he didn't get a jury trial because they didn't ask for one. So now, he's playing the victim on that. And they're not making, from what I'm told, legal arguments. They're just making political
excuses.
Statements in court, which don't work in a court of law, do they?
No, I would just disregard everything that Trump and his mouthpieces, his lawyers, say in the public square, because I hate to go back to Peter Navarro because, that's just not a pleasant topic. But remember how he was endlessly saying the Green Bay sweep was a righteous thing.
Yeah.
I had executive privilege, therefore I will be found not guilty. The jury, when they started deliberating his fate, Steph, they didn't have time for a cup of coffee. They convicted him so fast, it made his head spin. That's because everything that these people say in the public square will never
Doesn't
make
fly.
an appearance inside a court of law because these aren't legal arguments. They're not sound or fact-based arguments. So just tune out what they say other than for the comedic value and the danger to our society, and just watch what happens in court.
Speaking of which, you said finally a judge, New York Judge Arthur Engoron, has gagged Trump to stop his dangerous speech and posts. Will this open the floodgates for more judges to restrict Trump's speech? It should, because hashtag justice matters. Because he's going to keep breaking them. A listener yesterday suggested, again, we're not legal experts like you, but suggested, Trump have to pay for the security of every person he threatens on Twitter, on social media or whatever. But I don't know, is that legally possible? What can and will happen, do you think? Because he's just going to keep defying these, isn't he?
Yeah, so let me say again, if he were detained pending trial, that would neutralize the threat and take away his megaphone.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go dark for a minute because as much as I celebrated Judge Engoron issuing a snap gag order, no briefs were filed, no arguments were made. A snap gag order. Why? Because Donald Trump endangered somebody that was very important to Judge Engoron, his law clerk. And he had every right to issue that gag order. But why is it, Steph, that all of the other judges can't step up and be just as concerned for the witnesses and the jurors and the prosecutors and their family members as Judge Engoron was for somebody that was very important to him, his law clerk, and instantly protect those people against Donald Trump?
Yeah.
This is an unequal application of the law at play. I'm not criticizing Judge Engoron. I'm criticizing everybody else for refusing to do for other people what Judge Engoron did for his law clerk and staff.
And my question is, why was the gag order so narrow? Why wouldn't it include witnesses, any witnesses or prosecutors or judges or whoever? I mean, I keep having this feeling, Glenn, like everybody keeps saying, are we just going to wait till something really bad happens I mean, it's just it has that feeling of a pot ready to boil. You went dark. I'm going to go darker. Our friend, because this whole Speaker of the House thing, Dino Badal said, a listener to my radio show shared her fear that if Trump becomes Speaker of the House and then MAGA terrorists may violently try to remove Biden and Harris to make Trump president before January 6th, that view might seem extreme, but given MAGA violence, it's a real concern. I had the same thought. This is the country we live in. I had the same thought.
Yeah, and I share Dean's concern. We are slouching toward the next January 6th-esque incident, and we don't have to, because the law has vehicles to deal with this in real time. Judge Engoron just deployed the rule of law to do that with respect to his staff, and why the other judges have declined to do it is again something I'll never understand.
Can you explain why Jim Jordan and the like have not been charged yet in January 6th, and he might be on the verge of becoming Speaker of the House of Representatives?
Again, we're slouching toward another violent incident if we keep this up. There are insurrectionists in Congress, Steph, and there are people in Congress who asked for pardons because they knew they'd committed crimes on and around January 6th, and they wanted to get away with those crimes, and yet there has not been 1 minute of accountability for any of it. This is something I can't explain, I don't understand, and it leaves me so disheartened with respect to our institutions of government, but it also leaves me energized to keep fighting like hell, or we won't have a country anymore.
Well, because there's stories like this every day, Glenn, out of Madison, Wisconsin. Man with a handgun seeking Democratic Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers arrested in the state capitol, posts bail, and returns with an assault rifle. I mean, this has become the threat environment we live in, right?
Yeah. And again, we have the vehicles, and we have the power, and we have the rule of law to take care of all of this. And I am not sure why the government officials aren't stepping up and deploying those tools.
Last one, let's touch on Georgia before we go. You said more plea offers extended by D.A. Willis in Trump's Georgia RICO case. Let the dominoes continue to fall because #Justice Matters. Just give us your update on what you think is happening in Georgia, because they use the term dominoes falling for a reason, right?
Yeah.
This Mr. Hall is the
down
first.
In Georgia, there's lots of good news because bail bondsman Scott Hall, who was deep into the corruption of the Coffee County voting machines, he is a domino that's going to fall right smack into Sidney Powell, who was also charged for that same criminal scheme corrupting the Coffee County voting equipment. And so I have to believe Sidney Powell's lawyers are powwowing right now and trying to figure out if she's going to plead guilty and cooperate. But because Fani Willis has now floated multiple plea offers to lots of people, that's the way RICO cases unfold. It's the way I ran RICO cases. We indicted more than 24 RICO defendants. We offered a bunch of pleas, some with cooperation, some without. All but 13 defendants pleaded guilty. We then took those 13 to trial in 3 waves of RICO trials. That's how I see this unfolding down in Georgia. And Fani Willis is going to get justice for the people of the state of Georgia. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And I want the Powell and Cheeseboro trial to go on as long as possible so we can keep saying the Cheese and Kraken trial. Okay. Also, Rob Reiner has just confirmed for Sexy Liberal LA, October 21st. Reconfirmed. Yes, for October 21st with Glenn Kirschner and Ron Perlman. This is the Alpha Liberal panel of all Alpha Liberal panels.
I can't wait.
Yeah, for Sexy Liberal. We kept saying we don't know how many indictments we'll be in. We didn't know we'd be espionage. God knows by the 21st. Where we'll be, but also pay-per-view for $20. You can watch it all around the world, sexyliberal.com. Glenn, thanks for helping us get through this just really perilous time for our democracy.
Yeah. And I can't wait to see you all and have some fun and maybe leave all of the gloom and doom behind, if only for a couple of hours.
Yes, we need to laugh or we'll cry all day.
Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. I hope you'll join me on my new audio podcast, Justice Matters. I'll be using my 30 years as a federal prosecutor and Army JAG to unpack, break down, and explain the legal issues of the day, particularly where the legal intersects with the political. Please look for Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner wherever you generally get your podcasts.